Back in April, the Sacramento Kings ended the Golden State Warriors season by defeating them in the play-in game inside the Golden One Center. Tonight, in their first real meaningful chance at revenge, the Warriors welcome the Kings inside the Chase Center, only to lose to them by Steph Curry's jersey number. A 30-point victory for the Kings, who have suddenly vaulted themselves right back into the Western Conference playoff race. We'll discuss right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Now customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Doug Christie has led the Kings to something they have not been able to do all season long. The Kings have won 4 straight games. I'm starting with that and emphasizing that because after the Kings beat the Memphis Grizzlies a couple of nights ago, while I was happy to give Doug Christie the praise and the credit for how he has turned this team around and how he has revived the Kings, is what I said after that Kings win over the Grizzlies. I did warn fans that the Kings had won 3 straight games before, 2 times, in fact, under Mike Brown earlier this season, including a 3-game losing streak before the 6-game losing streak, including 5 straight at home, that ultimately got Mike Brown fired. Well, Doug Christie now has done something that the Kings weren't able to do this season. He's gotten them to win 4 in a row. And more specifically, with each one of these wins, the Kings are looking better and better and better and better. And tonight, the Sacramento Kings destroyed the Golden State Warriors on the road without their star in DeAaron Fox. We're going to talk about that in a lot of detail in the next segment and discuss how this game does and doesn't apply context to potentially life after Fox for the Kings, if they do indeed decide to move on or if Fox decides he wants out. This game is something that we can at least file away a little bit, but we'll talk about that more later on because I want to talk about Doug Christie and the Kings players that did play in tonight's game. Doug Christie has this team balling right now. Sacramento had 7 players in double figures scoring. I point that out too because after the Grizzlies game, I pointed out the Kings had 6 double figure scorers in that game. And this is something that was very consistent with the Kings 2 years ago during Beam Team 1, the year that the Kings made the playoffs, made that epic turnaround, and had the best offense in NBA history. One of the most consistent traits of that team was that everybody ate. Everybody was involved in Sacramento's offensive explosion. Over the last 2 games, the Kings are getting back to that. Tonight, they had 51, 44, 90 shooting splits. 51% from the field, 44% from three-point range, 90% from the free throw line. They hit 20 of 22 free throws, which you love to see, and 19 made threes in this game. That means over the last 2 games, the Sacramento Kings have made 43 pointers. Considering how much the Kings struggled from three-point range and shooting the 3 ball earlier on this season, what a welcome sight that is. And again, everybody ate. Everybody was knocking those 3s down. Sacramento got off to another hot start in this game. This has been a direct emphasis of Doug Christie since taking over, emphasizing strong starts, setting the tone. 2 games in a row where the Kings have dominated in the first quarter. They led 36-21 after that first quarter, built as high of as an 18-point lead early on in this game. And I love that the Warriors made a battle back. They made a push back in that second quarter, right? Steph Curry had 2 4-point plays over the span of like 60 seconds, right? And this has actually been an issue recently with the Sacramento Kings, not including the 3-point play that the Kings gave up to the Detroit Pistons at the end of the game, DeAaron Fox fouling Jaden Ivey, that allowed the Pistons to win that game. And that was the last game we saw Mike Brown coach for Sacramento. Not including that game, over these last 3 games, I'm trying to get the exact number because I tweeted this out. Over the last 4 games, over the last 4 games, which the Kings are 4-0 over, Sacramento has fouled 3-point shooters 8 times, including twice tonight. That's something this team has to work on and correct and fix. They can't keep fouling 3-point shooters. But all of that considered, the Warriors have these 2 4-point plays by Steph Curry, seem to be getting a little bit of momentum, and then the Kings very quickly turn it back around, retake control, build a 20-point lead that got up to like 22 or 23, and they led by, 23 or 25 at halftime, right? I love how Sacramento took the counterpunch from the Warriors that you knew was coming, dealt with it, and then responded and hit the Warriors even harder than they did in the first quarter. Here are some of the Kings' NBA rankings over the last 5 games. Again, Doug Christie has been the interim head coach of the Kings for the last 5 games. He's 4-1 over those 5 games. The Kings are 3rd in the NBA in offensive rating at 122.7. The higher the offensive rating, the better. The Kings are 14th in the NBA in defensive rating, 114.5. The lower the defensive rating, the better. 14th is not top 10. It's still not fantastic. But if the Kings are going to have a really, really, really good offense and a middle-of-the-line defense, that's what we were talking about going into last season, right? If the Kings could find a way to continue their lethality or effectiveness on the offensive end and just make the defense league average, how good could that team be? Well, last season, as we saw the Kings defensively get to that league average to slightly above average, we saw the offense take too big of a dip down. That's what led to the Kings missing the playoffs last year. Well, Doug Christie right now has the Kings with the top 30 offensive rating in the league, 14th in NBA defensive rating, 5th in the NBA in net rating at 8.2. So their offensive rating is 8.2 points better than their defensive rating. 8.2 net rating is very, very good. Looking more specifically into stats, the Kings are 4th in the NBA in points per game. Over the 5-game stretch in the Doug Christie era, the Kings are averaging 122.7 points per game. They are 4th in the NBA in assists per game, averaging 30 assists per contest over the last 5 games, or per game contest rather over the last 5 games. And they're 4th in the NBA in steals, averaging 10.2 per game in the Doug Christie era. Somebody asked me, they reached out to me on Twitter, and as many of you know listening and following me on social media, many of you know that I am very pro Mike Brown. I was very pro Mike Brown. I thought the Kings firing Mike Brown was a disaster. I was very adamant in my belief that Mike Brown was not the problem in Sacramento. Well, as of right now, I'm being proven wrong. It's not a done deal. It's not signed, sealed, and delivered. But as of right now, I'm being proven wrong. And I don't have an issue with that. I have no issue saying that publicly, privately, whatever. I bring up Mike Brown because this fan asked me if Doug Christie had this team getting back to what they were 2 years ago. And my answer was simple. This is the most that the Sacramento Kings have looked like Beam Team 1, which was obviously the best version of themselves that we've seen in almost 20 years. This is the closest that they look to Beam Team 1 consistently. There were games earlier this season where they looked like it, had flashes of it. There were games periodically last season where they had flashes of it. But this is game after game after game after game. And really over the last 3 games, Sacramento has looked like themselves again. They've looked like what everybody believes their identity should be. And while I do agree with the Mike Brown philosophy of, hey, we can't just put ourselves in one box. We can't just only be an offensively driven team. And we want to be more than what people think we should be or can be on the defensive end. I agree with all of that. But when you are focused so much on that that you get away from what you do well, it causes a problem, as we've seen. And what I think Doug Christie has done a fantastic job over these 5 games is refocus the Sacramento Kings on who they are and what their identity is. He's done that by simplifying. He simplified things on offense. He simplified things on defense. On the surface, I think that's a great thing. It's clearly working. If the Kings get back to the postseason, which right now they're working their way back into that hunt, if they get back to the postseason, then we can maybe start to talk about how simplifying things is a problem because life gets a lot more complex in the postseason. But you know who understands that? Doug Christie, who played many a game in the postseason wearing a Sacramento Kings jersey, right? So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But the ball is zipping around. The pace is good. The three-point shootings or shots are falling. The biggest difference, though, that I see from Beam Team 1's success and this team's current success is that their offense tonight specifically was directly influenced by their defense. Directly influenced. The Kings were getting it started on the defensive end, and the offense was flourishing because of it. And they set that tone from the very beginning. 34 points off of 22 Warrior turnovers tonight. 34 points off of 22 turnovers. That's domination. The Kings got out in transition and scored 15 fast break points. There's a lot of players that I want to highlight and talk about. Most of you would think, Matt, the first guy you're going to talk about and should talk about is Malik Monk because of the fantastic game that he had. Actually, no. I'm saving Malik Monk for next segment, specifically with how it ties into the DeAaron Fox conversation. I want to talk about Keon Ellis first. Not that this is in order of importance, but I think Keon Ellis is important when also talking about what Doug Christie does well. Because Keon is the guy that I think is the most obvious physical representation of the difference between Christie and Brown. That's because Keon, I think, by extension, is who Doug Christie is, right? I look at Keon and I look at the relentlessness that he plays with, the effort and hustle and energy that he plays with, and how he's given that for Doug Christie over these last 5 games. And I have to blink and rub my eyes sometimes because even though Keon and Doug don't look anything alike, I see so much Doug Christie in the way Keon Ellis plays. Maybe that's why Keon likes playing for Doug so much. Now, I will say that there were times earlier this season where Keon was benched or Keon had a short leash from Mike Brown. And there were plays that the film will show he got beat, he gambled for steals, he maybe was flat-footed a little bit, didn't give the energy that he is showing over these last couple of games, didn't give that effort, and Mike Brown punished him for it. I've seen the film. It's been shown to me. So while I'm not saying that Keon should have had the short leash that Mike Brown had with him, because I think that was one of Mike Brown's biggest, most obvious mistakes. He should have played Keon Ellis more 100%. And getting tricky with Keon Ellis DNPs or lowering his minutes at times and giving them to guys like Doug McDermott and even Kevin Huerter, it didn't make sense. It was a mistake. But there were elements of the mistakes that Keon Ellis was making that I think he needs to own up to, and I think probably behind closed doors he did own up to. Because the way he's playing right now is sensational. It's absolutely sensational. And what I love, tonight, 11 points, 2 assists, 2 steals. It's not even his best stat line, not even close to his best stat line that we've seen. The other night against Memphis, what did he have, 3 steals and 2 blocks or 4 steals and 2 blocks or something like that? We've seen better numbers from Keon. But what I was watching with Keon over and over and over again, and if you can go back and watch this game again, pay attention to how many times that man was dropped on his back. Keon Ellis was taken out by illegal screen after illegal screen after illegal screen. And he popped right back up and kept fighting through. Right? The Warriors are known for getting away with a thing or two with screens, to the point where Draymond Green completely blindsided Keon with a hard screen that knocked Keon to the floor. Steve Kerr lost his mind and picked up a technical foul because he wanted a flopping call on Keon, even though there was no call on the play against the Warriors. And then Doug Christie straight up looked like he wanted to fight somebody for knocking Keon out or knocking Keon down, whether it was Draymond Green or I think Doug was kind of fired up and pissed off a little bit at Steve Kerr making all that fuss about a flop. Doug had to be escorted back to the bench by Domantas Sabonis. And if you haven't seen this screenshot, go to my Twitter account right now, @MattGeorgeSack. You'll see the picture of Domantas having his arm around Doug, guiding him back to the bench, slapping him on the chest, big smile on his face. Clearly, these guys love playing for Doug. Doesn't surprise me at all. I expected that from day one. Clearly, that is the massive difference. These guys love playing for Doug. And I'm not saying all of them hated playing for Mike Brown. There was a respect level with Mike Brown that was obvious from the very beginning. But Doug, they know, will be right in the trenches with them. And we're seeing it have an effect on how they're playing. Doug coaches desperate. That's what I love. Doug coaches like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals every single time. He coaches like the Sacramento Kings are down by 15 points but are fighting their way back in every single time. And that's what this team seems to have desperately needed. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Think LeBron is going to drop 30 points, or maybe Luka's going to get more than 8 assists? Prize Picks lets you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I've been using Prize Picks all season long. I had a very, very successful season with Prize Picks last year. I'll be honest with you, not doing too hot this year, but there's so many fun and unique ways to play, whether you're going specifically with the game that the Kings are playing that given night, or you can do multiple games across the NBA landscape, or with the NFL playoffs coming on an NFL playoff night, if the Kings are playing or NBA action is going on, you can do football and basketball picks at the same time. Now is the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, no need to win to get the bonus $50 instantly guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So not only did the Sacramento Kings dominate the Golden State Warriors inside the Chase Center tonight, they did it without DeAaron Fox. So the Kings, a significant loss for them tonight. Good news is they did have Keegan Murray back, and Keegan had a pretty good game. I'll talk about Keegan in a little bit. But no DeAaron Fox, and this is actually the first game that DeAaron Fox has missed this season. DeAaron Fox is second in the NBA behind just Mikal Bridges in total minutes played. Right, so Fox has been the engine that has made this Kings team run so far this season. He doesn't play tonight. Sacramento Kings didn't skip a beat. They did not skip a beat, mainly because of the play of Malik Monk. 2 games in a row where Malik Monk was fan-freaking-tastic, but tonight he was special. 26 points, 5 of 8 from three-point range, 12 assists. He had 10 assists in his first 16 minutes of action. He was fantastic. A lot of them were lobs, too, in transition. Also had 4 steals and a block. Malik was the winner of the Defensive Player of the Game crown tonight. So you watch what Malik Monk did as the primary playmaker, ball handler, point guard, facilitator, whatever you want to say. He was the guy to fill DeAaron Fox's shoes more than anybody else. Now, everybody has to step up when you're missing a player like DeAaron Fox, and everybody did. Like I said, 7 players finished in double-figure scoring. That's a good way to make up your the points that you're losing from your leading scorer being out. But Malik took on Fox's primary responsibilities, and he shined. Absolutely shined. And I saw this circulating on social media. I've already gotten a couple emails about it even before I started recording this podcast. It's hard not to think about life after DeAaron Fox when watching this game and taking context from this game. Thinking about if Fox decided he wanted out, if both sides headed for a breakup this upcoming summer. I don't think it's happening at the trade deadline, so I'm really not going to really talk about the Kings moving DeAaron Fox at the trade deadline anymore at this point. There's just no reason to believe it's going to happen. It could pick back up as we get closer to the deadline. As of right now, I think that's dead done conversation. If the Kings are moving on from DeAaron Fox, it feels like if there's any chance of it happening, it will be this upcoming summer. But I think tonight was an indication that there is a life after DeAaron Fox, right? If you have Malik Monk and Devin Carter and Keon Ellis, you still have 3 very talented guards to hold that position down. Now, all 3 of them are not DeAaron Fox. All 3 of them combined do not have the superstar talent that DeAaron Fox potentially has or has shown from time to time. But clearly, the Kings can find success and can still play their brand of basketball without their star. Now, here is where I emphasize caution a little bit. Because while this is good context to file away, while we can look at this game and have, I don't know if confidence is the word, but be reassured that if the Fox era in Sacramento does end and he decides to move on, or the Kings decide to move on from him, if they make that decision, it doesn't mean it's doom and gloom, it's over, the Kings are straight up tanking or going back into to basketball hell tenfold, right? That's not, we can take the context from this game and know that the Kings can still be competitive even without DeAaron Fox. But my caution is, this is one game. One very good game. But one game when the Sacramento Kings were already playing well and playing hard given the circumstances of Doug Christie taking over and everything they've been through over the last week and a half or so. One game without Fox is very different from 82 games or every game without Fox. Every once in a while, if you're missing your star or you're missing an important piece, you can rally and you can win those games. It's basketball. Anybody can win on any given night, right? But what we still haven't seen, what this one game didn't show us, is that the Kings really weren't in a position tonight where they needed Fox. Credit to them, they played their way into that position. But Sacramento didn't really go through a lull in this game where they couldn't get a bucket that Fox can come in and kind of carry them through. The Kings beat the crap out of the Warriors, so this game wasn't even close, so they didn't have to worry about anything in crunch time, which is where DeAaron Fox shines. And clearly, as much as I love DeMar DeRozan, Fox has still been the above and beyond leader for the Sacramento Kings in the clutch. DeMar has not been anywhere close to him, for being honest. So, again, I think it's fine to use this game in the context of, hey, what does life look like if DeAaron Fox decides to move on? And it's okay to be reassured by this game. But I would hesitate to go, wow, look how good the Kings were without DeAaron Fox. You know what? Move him at the deadline and go out and get me 3 starter or potentially rotation pieces, NBA-proven players to bolster the rotation and give the ball to Malik Monk and have him run his amazing 2-man game with Domantas Sabonis, and the Sacramento Kings will be a better team without DeAaron Fox. We're not even close to there yet. So I just want to emphasize that. Speaking of Domantas Sabonis, he dominated. And it's extra sweet, right, when he dominates the Golden State Warriors. Nothing Kevon Looney or Draymond Green or any of them could do to stop him. 22 points, 10 of 13 from the field, 13 rebounds, 7 assists. In the first quarter, he had 8 points, shot 4 of 5 from the field, had 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Here's the main thing that I want to talk about from this game from Domantas Sabonis. Doug Christie has shared with us that he has turned to Fox and Sabonis as the tone setters, right? You guys are the guys that set the tone for our team. Well, DeAaron Fox is out. That means a large portion of that responsibility falls on the shoulders of Domantas Sabonis, and he comes out and has that kind of first quarter. Domantas Sabonis answered Doug Christie's call in a big way, which shouldn't surprise anyone considering Doug Christie has been Domas's coach. He's been his primary developmental coach, the guy that worked with him before games and during practices and everything. That was his guy. Those two clearly have a bond, clearly have a connection. Domantas is clearly responding to Doug. And he came out and he set the tone for the Sacramento Kings that they never really lost over the remainder of the game. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets whether you win or you lose. There is absolutely nothing to fear. Go and play your first bet. If you win, fantastic. Here's $200 on top of what you already won. If you lose, doesn't matter. Here's $200. Keep betting, make that money back, and then some. on FanDuel. The FanDuel app gives you everything that you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Make sure you visit the website and share betting lines around the team or the league that you're interested in, depending upon what games that you're really locked into. Like, I'll be honest with you. NFL playoffs, with being a Las Vegas Raider fan, right, I don't care. And especially with the San Francisco 49ers missing the playoffs as well, there's not a lot of local interest in the NFL playoffs beyond just being a football fan. FanDuel helps kind of carry you through those games and those matchups in the playoffs that maybe you're not too excited about, because it gives you a little something extra to have on the line. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Continuing on with the individual performers to highlight, how about the rookie, Devin Carter, his second straight game played for the Kings. Game 1, didn't score, but looked good. Pulled down some rebounds, played some good defense, dished out a couple assists. Game 2, he made up for it offensively. He had 13 points, 4 of 11 from the field, 2 of 7 from three-point range, 7 rebounds for a point guard, 2 assists, and a steal. His defensive impact is obvious. He comes into the game, the first possession, guards Dennis Schroeder the entire way up the floor. I think the Kings ended up forcing a turnover on that possession. His defensive impact is obvious. And I don't mean this in any kind of disrespectful way, but think back to Davion Mitchell. Fantastic on-ball, relentless defender. But what was Davion Mitchell's problem? He's undersized, right? And inside the Chase Center last season, the Kings lost via a buzzer beater from Klay Thompson. Why? Because Davion Mitchell was undersized. Klay Thompson shot and hit a game winner over the top of him. Davion, I think, is doing good things in Toronto. Really liked the guy, really enjoyed talking to the guy and covering the guy while he was here in Sacramento. But you can see the clear difference that Devin Carter's wingspan makes. If Davion Mitchell were 2 or 3 inches taller, I think everybody would know who Davion Mitchell is in the NBA. Just that because of how good of a defender he is. But Devin Carter's got that wingspan, and it helps him defensively, and it helps him off the glass. And what I love, too, from Davion in this game, from Devin in this game, it helps that the Kings were blowing the Warriors out, and everybody was feeling themselves offensively. But he was fearless, right? He had a shot, he took it. If it was open, he took it. He took 11 shots in this game. Love it. Went 0 of 3 in his first game. Fine. Like, get him up. I love that Devin seems eager to make an impact, right? He knows, I'm joining the season midway through or close to midway through. The season hasn't gone as planned. They need reinforcements. They need my energy. They need my hustle. I'm now playing for a coach that did all those things himself. I'm just going to go out there and play my game, play basketball. And he's playing like he's been playing this entire season, and he's just slowly starting to figure things out. I'm sure he's going to hit rookie walls, and he's going to have struggles in certain areas. It's just 2 games in. But I like what I'm seeing from the rookie, and he's making a clear impact. I did think it was interesting. Devin Carter played the second most minutes of any King off the bench, just barely behind Trey Lyles. Devin Carter played more minutes than Kevin Huerter did in this game. He had 23 minutes tonight. Kevin Huerter barely just under 20 minutes. Now, this is not going to turn into a crap on Kevin Huerter session, because Kevin Huerter had a really freaking good game, too, for the Kings off the bench. He shot the ball well, had 16 points, 4 of 6 from three-point range, also grabbed a couple of steals on the defensive end. Kevin Huerter played really, really well for the Kings off the bench. You can take a snapshot of this and have this every other game or every 2 games or whatever from Huerter off the bench. You've got something really, really good there. So I love this game from Kevin Huerter. I thought it was interesting, though, that Carter played more minutes than Huerter in just his second game in the NBA. Worth paying attention to. Let's talk about Keegan Murray, too. There's something about the Chase Center that Keegan Murray loves. He loves playing in that building, from his big performances that he had in that building in the playoffs his rookie season, too. He technically got his first ever win and played his first ever game as a pro inside the Chase Center. Remember the California Classic that year, the Cali Classic in the Chase Center? That's where the W meme or the W GIF that you see from Keegan Murray comes from. That was after the win in his first game inside the Chase Center. So something about that building, Keegan Murray really enjoys. Now, his stat line's not the greatest. It's not going to blow you away. 11 points, 3 of 8 from three-point range, but all 3 of those three-pointers came in the first half. He started the game well shooting the basketball, which helped, again, set the tone for the Kings. Also had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. Did get into a little bit of foul trouble, but remember, this is Keegan's first game back from an ankle injury that kept him out the last 2 games. Do you still want to see more? 100%. Could he have been better? Absolutely. Did he still miss some open threes that he should hit? Yes. But a 3 3-pointer game, you would like to have more than 11 points from Keegan on pretty much a nightly basis. But Keegan played well in his first game back. The 3-point shot was falling at a respectable rate, so you're happy with that. Now you want more, not just from Keegan, but from the Kings, period, right? You've won 4 straight. Tomorrow night, you have the Miami Heat inside the Golden One Center. Do it again. Keep the foot on the gas pedal. Push. Attack. Remember, the Kings beat the Heat earlier this season on a Domantas Sabonis buzzer beater in Miami. So I think the Heat are probably going to still have that on their mind, but the Kings know they can beat this team. So they got to go out and do it again, this time on their home floor. And, of course, the Heat are going through a bit of turmoil right now, a bit of dysfunction. Everything going on with Jimmy Butler, he essentially said he's done with there, he wants out. And then the team kind of suspended him for that. So they're dealing with that right now. They're obviously shorthanded because Jimmy is one of their best, if not the best player on that team. And the Heat just got their butts kicked by the Utah Jazz on their home floor. The Kings lost, or rather the Heat lost to the Jazz 136-100 at home, their last game. Now, I do think that the Kings should be a little bit cautious because this team is fired up both from that embarrassing loss and sometimes when you're using all these frustrations of things happening off the floor and any anger directed at Jimmy Butler that this organization or this team and these players might be going through, using that to fuel yourself and give yourself energy on the floor, that's something the Kings have to be aware of, especially on the second night of a back-to-back. But keep pushing. I want to keep seeing the Kings play like Doug Christie is coaching. Play with desperation. Play like this is Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Play like you're down by 15 points or down by 10 points, but working your way back into the game at all times. Why? Because even if the Kings in the moment aren't and are riding high on a 4-game win streak right now, they're still down in the standings. But the good news is they're not out, not even close. With this 4-game win streak, the Kings have actually jumped past the Phoenix Suns. The Kings are now 17-19. They're up to 11th, which is still out of the play-in, but they're 1 game back of the Minnesota Timberwolves in the play-in, in the final play-in spot. They're a game and a half back of both the Spurs and the Warriors. And they've beat both those teams once in 8th and 9th. 8th is a big spot, too, because if you get into 8th, you only have to win 1 game in the play-in round to make it to the playoffs. If you're in 9th, like the Kings were last year, you get to host the first game, sure, but then you have to face the loser of the 7-8 game, which is what happened when the Kings played against the Pelicans last year and were eliminated and missed out on the playoffs. So if you finish in 8th, you can win that 1 game, and you're right into the playoffs in the 7th seed. So that 8th spot is pretty important. But on top of that, the Kings are only 3.5 games back of 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is held by the Lakers, the Mavericks, who the Kings have already beat, and the Clippers. Now, we know the Kings have lost to the Lakers 4 times, so they're not having any hope of that tiebreaker. But they're right there. They're right there. And there's still, 46 games remaining this season? They're right there. Right? Keep fighting. Keep pushing. Play with the desperation like you only have 5 games left, not 46. And I think the Kings have a very, very, very good chance of winning this game tomorrow night and lighting their 5th straight beam. Let's hope it happens. I'll be at the Golden One Center for that game. If you're coming, come by. Say hi. I'm at the top of section 105. That's where I sit in the media area at the very top of the concourse before you go down the stairs to the seats. Come by that section and say hi. If you see me, just make sure the usher waves me down, or you'll see the back of my head. You can just yell at me too. Don't throw anything at me, but yell at me. I'd be happy to see you and come by and chat and say hi. I'm expecting good vibes and a lot of fun inside the Golden One Center tomorrow night, and hopefully again another beam. Of course, no matter what, I'll have another post-game podcast for you, so make sure you join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.